Yo, what's up, guys? I'm super excited to interview my guy Apple here, who I met recently at Funnel Hacking Live. I know a lot of you guys were there, so if you were at FHL as well, or if you met Apple, give me a hashtag, give me a hashtag FHL down below. But I really want to dive into and kind of like have Apple share his story because he's super young. You're 20 now, right?
Yeah, I just turned 20.
Okay, but you got a top 100 business podcast at 19. So I want to dive into like your struggles, like how you like what you learned, what you did to kind of do it in your situation. Who like yeah, I have a lot of questions here, guys. If you have any questions, drop them down below. And if you're on the replay, give me a hashtag replay. More likes, more comments we get helps boost this post, so Facebook shows this to more people. If you're on the live, we got 3 people right now. Give me a hashtag live. Drop your questions below. But Andrew, firstly, for people who don't know who you are, what your podcast is, can you kind of explain that real quickly?
100%. First off, Daxie, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really do appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to speak with other people who are doing podcasting, who are doing anything, and just share my story with them. So first off, just thank you so much, man. And as far as my podcast goes, so it's called Young Smart Money. And basically what I do, as Daxie said, I'm recently 20 years old, and I'm a college student. So my passion that I've been building up for about the last 2 years is I've been very curious on the other routes that people can go down other than the traditional 9 to 5. Okay, because everyone knows that you could get a job at IBM working 40 hours a week, making 80 grand a year, and that's great. Like you get your 4-year degree and you do that. But like I was curious, like what else could I be doing? Like what else could I be doing with my life? What are my other options? So I decided to start the podcast in order to sort of shine some light on a bunch of different angles of what you could potentially do with your life. So I interview people from real estate to social media marketing to fitness influencers, really just all across the board. Any type of person, any type of entrepreneur you could think of, I have them on the show. I share their story with an audience of young people and sort of get their best tips, tricks, and strategies that other young people could apply to go out there and find something that they're really passionate about.
Cool. That's really good. What's up, Ross? What's up, Jackson? What's up, Trevor? Giving us hashtag lives. Love it. If you have any questions for Apple, drop them below. Do you like Apple more or Andrew?
I prefer Apple.
Okay. I keep thinking of the company Apple too. But dude, so like, why did you start the podcast? Was it primarily for you and learning and talking to the right people? Or was there some like, what was the goal, like the number one goal for you?
Yeah, so I mean, starting off, and I don't think I'm getting the chat on my end, but oh wait, maybe I click on that. I don't know. I'll figure this out. But basically, so I started this show. I'd been making YouTube videos for a couple months, and I was having a lot of fun with it. They weren't really getting much traction, but I was just having a good time and sharing my knowledge with people. So I was having a good time with that. And then I actually got interviewed on a local radio station at my college on a couple of the business ventures I was working on. I was doing some social media stuff, doing some YouTube stuff, and just doing a bunch of different things. So they had me on the radio to interview me, and I really liked that format because I'd been doing YouTube videos for a while, getting in front of the camera, setting up a little studio, and doing the whole production of like writing like an outline and doing all that stuff. But I really liked the format of just like sitting down with somebody, having a conversation, and really just letting other people listen in and hear their story, share their experiences. So that was the biggest thing for me. And I was like, wow, I really like this format. So literally the next week, I sort of had an in with the radio station. So I got somebody to let me in, and I used one of their booths to record like 4 different podcast episodes because I was just like so into it. I'm like, I just want to like sit down and create. And the first ones I did were actually just me. And that was because I didn't really know anybody. I didn't really have any connections. So it was sort of just like, okay, I really like this format because I don't have to like get all, I don't know, like get the lights out and get the outline out and all that stuff. So I really liked that format. So I just, went in the booth, recorded some episodes. They were really, really bad. They're still up if you go back to the very beginning. But that's basically how it got started. And then as time went on, I started making more connections with other entrepreneurs. And then I transitioned into an interview-based show just because I thought that was the best way to sort of like spread my, a lot more information and really share with people the different routes that they could be going down.
Yeah, a lot of people are super like they think the first episodes have to be perfect, but that's how you show people like where you came from, like you sucked, and that gives people optimism. I'm gonna go listen. I'm gonna go listen to them now just to laugh a little bit. But
man, they were bad.
You're primarily interview-based show right now?
Yeah, it's pretty much exclusively interviews. I have a couple solo episodes here and there, but I'm really phasing those out and really only do one if I feel particularly compelled on a certain topic or a certain thing that I just want to share with people.
So from your end, from having it, how much time do you think it takes you to, set up the podcast like on a weekly basis, whether it's recording, uploading things, like your whole process? How much time does it take?
Really not that much time because recently, actually, a couple weeks ago, maybe about a month ago now, I brought on two editors. So now I have two editors that are editing all my shows, and so that's a huge thing off my plate. Because before, if you have like an hour-long interview and you have to go through and edit that, maybe your guest like messed up on something, they slipped up, they said something they didn't want to say, they text you afterwards and they're like, oh, could you actually remove this? Like that can take a lot of time. So my editing was taking probably around 2 hours per episode, which was a lot of time that I was devoting to this. And being a student, being somebody who's doing a bunch of different things at once, that wasn't great. So I decided I wanted to make a change, and I found some fairly cost-effective ways to outsource that. So I took that off my plate, and that was definitely the biggest use of time, because now really all I have to do is find a guest. So I'll go through usually Instagram. I'll see, okay, I'll find a person that I eventually want to get to. So I'll have like right now I have a list of top 5 people that I want to interview on my show. And what I'll do is, if I don't have a connection directly to that person, I'll go through and see who are they following. Okay. And if they're following like a certain person that I have a mutual connection with, then I'll reach out to that person and really just build it off of the mutual connections that I can make, and really just use that like stair step pattern in order to get to the people that I'm looking to get to. I don't know if that was the question you asked, but I sort of just went down a rabbit hole
No.
there.
That's perfect. No, that's like Dream 100 strategy. Like, I don't know
exactly.
if like Art of War too, like the best way to kind of get to an enemy or to get to someone is to like surprise them. So like I've used that same method to get to people, is like I become friends with their friends.
Yep.
So then then they talk for me, and then it's just automatic. It's like they already trust you, so that transfer is already trusted to you, or they trust their friends, so that transfer is trusted to you.
Yep.
So your editors, how much are you paying them, and like what are they doing in your whole process? Just the audio, or are they posting for you and everything?
Yeah, so they're doing literally everything. So I'm sitting down, like I said, I'll find my guest, I'll reach out to my guest, I'll do some research on my guest, I'll interview them, and then I send the raw video to my editors. They edit everything. They have my intro music. I'll record a separate intro for each episode, but basically I just send them all of the raw stuff, and then they will post it on my podcast RSS feed. They'll post it on YouTube. They'll do titles, tags, descriptions. I'll put some of my interviews on YouTube. It's not a huge thing for me right now, but I figure why not just give it another place for people to find it. So all in all, they basically do everything, and I outsource it to the Philippines. So the cost of living is drastically different. But just to give you some context, I'm paying roughly between $5 and $6 per interview.
Yeah,
for it to be posted and everything.
Yeah, virtual assistance is like super, especially hiring from Philippines. That works very well. What's up, Trevor, who just commented Dream 100? Actually, he was with me last year at Dream 100 Con. It was only like 150 people. Like all the heavy hitter, it was like a $25,000 or $2,500 ticket. It was pretty expensive. Dang. But it was pretty awesome. Like I got to meet Russell there and a few other cool people. But okay, I kind of want to. How many episodes are you producing this week, actually, or like in like every week?
Yeah, so right now I'm at 3 a week. Okay. Over the next 2 weeks, that's going to be at 5, and hopefully 2 weeks after that, I'll be at 7. So that's ideally where I want to get to, because now that my editors have sort of gotten in the groove and we're working pretty well together, I really want to scale this up as quickly as possible. Okay, and like, do you have different flavors of episodes? Like, how do you kind of distribute which episode is which? Yeah, so for me, the overall structure is pretty similar. So I'll start off the episode with like an intro on them. I'll let them go into their story for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And then we'll dive deeper into whatever area they're in. So if they're in real estate, maybe they're in wholesaling, we'll do sort of like a wholesaling crash course and give our listeners like some steps they could take to get started, and basically just an intro as to like what wholesaling even is. From there, I have some questions that I like to ask about like their mentors, because I find that mentors are very impactful on a lot of the people I interview live. So I like to hear that side of things, how they found their mentors, all that good stuff. And then if they've built a team around themselves, I like to talk about their team and then their challenges. So those are the big 3 that I like to hit as well. And then I wrap it up with a couple questions that I ask all of my guests, just to have some continuity between episodes and to sort of hear different people's takes on the same questions. Gotcha. So we got 7 people live right now. If you're live, give me some likes, give me some hashtag lives. Let's boost this post a little bit so more people can. I love what you're saying so far, dude. So I want to get into. We kind of touched it a little bit when you went down that rabbit hole. Your strategies for landing high quality guests. You said one strategy, if you can't get straight contact with them, is to get contact with the people that are close to them.
do you have like a checklist you go through, like certain platforms you reach out to, like follow-up sequences? Like what's your approach to getting high
So
quality guys?
it's very unsystematized. Like I don't have a checklist. I don't have like a step one, step two, step three type process that I go through. I thought about putting one together at one point, but it just didn't really make sense to me because I feel like every situation is pretty different. But usually what I'll do is I do everything on Instagram. Okay. All of my networking, all of everything takes place on Instagram. Like I'm barely on Facebook. I don't have a Twitter. I don't have Pinterest or I don't use LinkedIn. So everything that I do is on Instagram. And I find that most of the people that I want to interview, most of the entrepreneurs that I want to interview are pretty active on Instagram, because if they're not active on Instagram, chances are they're not really active on any social platform, and then it's just going to be harder to find them in general. But so typically what I'll do is I have a list. I have a list of a couple dozen people that I'm like, I would like to have these people on the show. And what I'll do is generally I'll interact with their content for a while. I'll drop comments every once in a while. I will just routinely engage that they'll see my name once in a while. They'll see like, oh, this person commented. Oh, this person liked my thing. They shared my thing. They posted about me in their story. And just all of these little touch points over and over and over tend to build up. And so then when I do actually go in and reach out to them directly, they at least recognize my name, because that's the biggest thing. If somebody doesn't recognize your name, odds are they're not going to open your DMs, because a lot of the people that I'm reaching out to are people that are getting dozens, if not hundreds of DMs every single day. So I want to have that name recognition in there. That's a really, really important thing that I think a lot of people neglect. A lot of people just go in for the kill right away, when in reality, you sort of got to romance a girl a bit. Okay. You have to like give it a little bit of time and really like show them who you are, show them what you're about. And because they're getting hit up by so many people. Like you can't just be like a one and done type thing. If you just like spray and pray across like a dozen different people at once, you're not going to get anybody to respond to you. So it's about that depth in the relationship is the biggest thing for me, and the biggest thing that I feel like a lot of people don't do. But then when it comes to actually reaching out, one thing that I do that, again, really separates me from a lot of people, I feel, and this is what I hear from the people I reach out to, is that I always reach out via video direct message. Okay. I will never send somebody a text on Instagram. I'll never do it in text. I usually, the first message is never an audio message either. It's always a video message, because I want them to see my face, and I want them to see how excited I am, how I actually care about who they are and what they do. And I feel like it's just harder to convey that over text or over audio, especially because they're getting so many text messages every single day that it's just going to blend in with the rest. So my number one strategy is always reach out with video, because when you do that, you really set yourself apart, because nobody is doing that. Okay. Like very, very few people are reaching out to people via video messages, because it's not as easy. You can't copy and paste it a million times. But it's very personal when you use their name, when you speak directly to them. It's extremely, extremely impactful and really makes a good first impression, because that first impression is so, so key when you're reaching out to somebody.
Yeah, dude, did you make this strategy up yourself, or you learn it from someone? Yeah. Okay, because this is literally like what I tell people. Like first of all, there's several things you can call it: social stalking, or like I like how you say touch points. Getting them to, it's almost like, I think of it as impressions. You're making impressions, and there's that scientific basis. Like if you see someone 7 times, then you feel like you know them.
Then you can trust them. Yep.
Exactly. And I actually do this on Facebook too. On Facebook, you can make it so you can see the people, like you can make this person a close friend, so you see their posts first all the time. So I have certain people that I want to build relationships with. I always see their posts in the feed, and I always like and comment, and like they like me for that. So when I do ask them for something, it's just like reciprocity. And also reaching out, video guys, like that is the truth. Like I don't know what it is. Like just imagine being on the receiving end. Like if you receive a video, like you feel like you're obligated to respond. My response rates when I send video are higher. And it just, that's how you stand out. Like text makes you look like everyone else.
100%.
So I love that. I love that. And Trevor had a question about monetizing. We'll get into that next. Was there anything else, any other strategies you use as far as finding high quality guests, like researching, or is it all just like discovery on Instagram?
It's mostly just discovery on Instagram. And then if I find somebody who I'm like, this person seems interesting, I'll click on the link in their bio. I'll dive a little bit deeper into them. I'll do some Google searching and really just figure out like what they're up to, how long they've been doing what they're doing, and if it's something that I think would bring value to the show. If it is, then I'll go ahead and reach out to them. If it's not, then I'll just keep moving. But yeah, it's really about looking, trying to look 2 steps ahead and like, okay, who are my top 5 right now? And what can I do to get 1 step closer to somebody in my top 5? And sometimes that's interviewing somebody that they know. Sometimes it's going to an event like Funnel Hacking Live. I only did 2 interviews in person there, but I lined up like 8 with people that were really high up there for me. So just making sure that you're getting yourself out there and really putting yourself out there and getting exposure to your name, which is another thing that I think I did pretty well is branding myself as Apple, and then the bandanas and the colored hair like really does well, because like at Funnel Hacking Live, there were a lot of people that recognized me that I had never met before, that I knew of, and I never talked to them, but they're like, oh yeah, you make this podcast or you do that, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. So it's branding is just really, really essential.
Yeah. There's a guy, Chris Record, who's kind of big in the ClickFunnels space. He always wears an orange hat, and people always recognize him because of the orange hat. I love that. And what's up, dude? Jay Jackson's here. He's like my two favorite guys.
Oh,
What's
Jay
up,
Jackson.
Yeah.
Nice, man.
Nicholas, hashtag live. If you guys are on the replay, give me a hashtag replay. So this gets boosted. But that's so true. Like my name isn't Daxi. Nobody knows that though, but it's so I don't have a competition when people remember it, and they always tell me like,
Yep.
hey, that name's cool. I won't forget it. I don't know if I'm getting orange hair soon, but maybe. So Trevor asked a question about monetizing, but before we get to that, I think it's important to ask another question before asking to monetize. Because to be honest, guys, if you don't have an audience, podcasting is not the best way to do that. Like there's other 100%. Ways to monetize easier. Starting a podcast, especially if you're trying to build an audience, is to get people to know, like, and trust you. So before that, I feel like this question will probably segue into that good. How do you get listeners for your podcast when you started off? Was it just through Instagram or?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because a lot of people, when they're starting off, one of their biggest hesitations is like, I would start a podcast, but I don't know if anybody's actually going to listen to me. Like, why would somebody choose to listen to me over all the other podcasts out there? So it's really important. The first thing I'm going to say is to differentiate yourself, okay? Because if you try to do what everybody else is doing, you're just going to blend in with everybody else, and there's going to be no reason for people to come to you, okay? You got to have your unique style, your unique flavor, and just something that sets you apart from everyone else. Because if you just blend in with everyone else, then no one's going to take the time to seek you out, to talk with their friends about you, and you're just not going to find that traction. So the first thing is like, be unique, differentiate yourself, because if you don't, you're not going to get anywhere. The next thing is just make sure you're providing value in your episodes, because no matter what tactics you use, what strategies you use, if the show itself is not valuable, then no one's going to come back. Like, you could get a ton of traffic to one of your episodes, but if the show sucks, you're not going to retain them. They're not going to come back time and time again. So it's really important to set these things up from the get before you even dive into like certain strategies, just because if the quality of the content is not there, then even if you get a bunch of people in, they're not going to stick around. So that's the biggest thing starting off, is just like, make sure it's good content and that it's different in some way. It doesn't have to be crazy different. Like, a lot of people are doing interview shows, but there's plenty of ways to differentiate your interview show from everybody else's. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. But then as far as my tactics go for getting people to the podcast, when I was starting off, the first thing that I did was I took advantage of my guests' networks in order to build the show. Because when I was just getting started, I wasn't getting very many listens. Okay, I didn't have that much traction because in the grand scheme of things, like, I'm not a huge influencer. Like, I don't have a TV show. I'm not somebody with 1 million followers on Instagram. So personally, I don't pull a lot of attention myself. And especially like a year ago when I started, I wasn't pulling much attention at all. So what I decided to do was find guests who had loyal followings, who had large and loyal followings that would want to be on the show and that would promote it with their audience. And I knew that their audience would consume any piece of content that this person ever appeared on. So that was my biggest strategy at first, and just finding those people with loyal audiences. And one thing here that I think is really important to mention as well, and that I didn't mention with guests, is that with podcasting, there's a huge imbalance of information. Okay, this is something that not a lot of people think about, but it's really important to keep in mind, because say you're starting a YouTube channel. Everybody can see that you have 12 subscribers and that your videos get like 18 views. Okay, everybody can see that. With a podcast, nobody knows. Nobody knows how many subscribers you have. Nobody knows how many listens you're getting. Nobody knows how many downloads you have. Like, nobody knows anything about your show. Okay, so that's a very important thing that you can really take advantage of if you're just starting out, because the only thing that they can see is the number of reviews that you have. Okay, so if you can get that review number to look decent, obviously if you have 0 reviews and you ask someone to be on your show, they're going to say, wow, this podcast was just started yesterday. They have no reviews. I'm not going to be on their show. But if you're able to get a decent number of reviews, maybe just a couple dozen reviews, people are going to be like, okay, people are actually listening to this show. They're actually liking it enough to take the time to write reviews. And that's such an important metric to focus on, especially at first, if you want to get high quality guests on there that are going to promote it to their followings. Because once you have those reviews, you have that social proof, and that's the only metric that they can see. It's the only way for them to gauge whether or not people are actually listening to your show or not. So I think it's really, really important that people keep that in mind when they're starting their show, because again, it's the only piece of information other people have, unlike the YouTube channel. People have no idea how many people are consuming your content. So that's something that you can really take advantage of at first when you're trying to land those high profile guests, is like leveraging the metrics that they can actually see.
Yeah, dude, that was great. There's a few points I want to kind of reiterate there. One, I mean, we already said it, the Dream 100, leveraging other people's audiences. I call it growing using OPP, other people's platforms. It's the biggest shortcut to grow in anything, in business and building an audience, podcasting, because they already have the people, you know? So also that was really like, I never thought about that. Nobody knows the data. So like, it's really good to make good first impressions. It's just, you got to make good first impressions, and having good content, good artwork, good like delivery, everything.
Yeah. Artwork's huge.
Jay, I think of it as your billboard, essentially.
Yeah.
Jay has a question here, and then we'll get to the monetizing. He asks, I'll answer it first, and then you can give your 2 cents. Few ways to make podcast intro and outro. Number one, I wouldn't, if it's taking you a lot of time, I would either hire someone to do it, or a lot of people think like intros and outros have to be like amazing from the start, but they don't. Like a lot of shows, they start out where it's just like, this is the whatever podcast, and it's just serves as a transition. So Jay, I would just focus more on the outro, the call to action. And that's pretty easy. You just want to know, the call to actions that work best are usually things that have good hooks. So freebies, or signing up for whatever, or anything that's like a no-brainer. So if you're going to have call to actions, make them no-brainers, and then easily find someone on Fiverr or Upwork to put some music on top, make it sound good. But use your voice. I hate people who use intros and it's not their voice. I mean, it's some industries that maybe like corporate, whatever. But if it's a personal brand podcast, you want to use your voice. What is your 2 cents on that? Few ways to make intros and outros.
Yeah, so for me, I guess what I do is my intro for each show is always different, because I just basically use it as a way to preface the show.
Are we talking about like the episode introduction or the show intro? So
I don't have a show introduction. Okay, I basically just include that at the beginning of my like, I'll just say, welcome back to Young Smart Money. My name's Apple Crider and I'm your host. Like, that's literally the only thing that I say every single time. And I don't have anything before that. So that's exactly how the show starts. And then I'll do a little like 1 minute, 90-second sort of bit on like what the show's going to be about, who we have on, why they're on, what they're going to talk about. And I record that afterwards so that I can give an accurate outline of the show and sort of prepare people for what they're going to hear, highlight different topics that might be of interest to them. So that's basically all I do. And then I have a little bit of music that goes in between that and the show. Actually, I take that back. Okay, so I lied. I do have one thing that goes before that. And I started doing this probably a little over a month ago, right before I hired my editors. And I'll put a around 10 to 15 second clip of something my guest says that's really powerful at the very beginning to try to hook people. So if they're talking about how they got fired from their job, I'll put this like little clip in of like, and that was when I knew that I had to leave. And that day I like put my 2 weeks notice on my boss's desk, and I'll put that at the beginning. And then they're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So that's my little strategy there to be a bit of a hook, but I don't have like a podcast intro that I use every time with like background music or anything like that.
No, that's perfect. Like, simpler the better. Like, if it's taking you time to do, just make that shit simple.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about going to Fiverr and getting one made, but I'm kind of like, it's not essential for me right now, and I feel like it's where it needs to be.
No, value is like 90+% of it.
Yeah,
people won't not listen to your show because you don't have an intro, but they won't listen to your show if the value's not good.
100%.
So we got 2 questions here. We're gonna go back to Trevor first. How do you monetize off of a podcast, or is it for fun experience? Yeah, let me put that question up.
Perfect. You want me to go first?
Yeah, that's all you.
Oh, that's all me. All right, perfect. Yeah. I'm excited. Okay, so Trevor, what I would say is, first of all, how I do it. Okay, so how I do it is I do not put ads on my show. I don't have pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll. I don't have any kind of advertisements on my show because I want to keep it clean and I want to keep it valuable. Okay, I've been approached by some advertisers and I'm not even considering taking on anybody right now, no matter what the product is or the service or anything, just because I want to keep it exclusively me and exclusively value. So I'm not going to read any scripts on my show. I'm not going to do any of that just because I want to keep it as valuable as possible, and I really want to invest myself into growing the show and making it as valuable as possible and really impacting people. So that being said, I'm still making a significant amount of money from the show. And that's through stuff that I'm doing on the back end. Okay. I don't want to detract from the experience of my listeners just to make some money. I would rather do that in a different way that I can do it on the back end that might take a little bit more time, energy, effort from me, but that would not take away from the value that's being provided in the show. So what I do, a couple examples of things that I'm doing right now. I like to do joint ventures with my guests. So right now I'm working on a couple different projects with guests that I've had on the show. So we're building some teaching programs. We're doing this guy who's a very high profile affiliate marketer has taken me on to sort of do a course with him. So I'm working on that right now, and that was spurred through the podcast. I'm actually creating like a podcast training program to like teach people how to grow their own podcast, monetize it, start it, all that good stuff. That was another thing that came about through the podcast. And just doing these things on the back end that don't take away from the listener's experience has been my main focus. And honestly, like I'm not even focused on trying to maximize income from the show right now, just because I'm 20 years old and I don't really need it. I know I have plenty of time to start creating an income for myself. And I already have plenty of income streams online that this doesn't need to be a significant one for me. And my main focus is really just the network. Like I realized that taking the time to build out an extensive network right now of high value individuals is going to pay off hugely over time. So for me, it's more about just investing in my network than it is in investing in actually producing income from the show. But that being said, there's plenty of ways to monetize on the back end, from things like affiliate marketing, stuff on your own website. You could create a training program. You could do coaching. You could do consulting. There's just so many different ways to monetize without having to put ads on your show. And I think unless you're like getting millions and millions and millions of listens every single episode, then it doesn't really make that much sense. Just because people are going to, especially if it's a personal brand podcast, like people want to hear you, they want to hear from you. Maybe if there's like a product that you really enjoy and that you talk about a lot and you have an opportunity to get sponsored by them, maybe it makes sense. But honestly, there's just so many better ways to go about it, in my opinion.
Cool. All right, I almost hit end broadcast there. That would have been bad. Trevor says, great answer, dude. Yeah, so Trevor, I work with a lot of people who have sponsors, and I could tell you the money isn't, like, even though they're making some money from sponsors, like you can make way more money from being your own sponsor, like selling your own shit if you really want to. And like kind of like piggybacking off of what you said, like I've met business partners from interviewing them on podcasts. Like there's so much money that could be involved in networking, and think of it as building an asset where if you want to talk to the right people and over time you have this show, this is the easiest way to build that relationship. It's almost a no-brainer. Like, hey, you want to get on my show? And then you open that conversation, and then that could lead to whatever, because they share a lot of information on your show.
Exactly.
So that's one of the best ways to do that. Cool. So we got another question here. What's the biggest advice for someone who is just starting out with the podcast and is a strategy of doing solo casts and having interviews? Okay. So the last question, it depends what your goal is. Obviously, if you're trying to grow an audience, doing interviews is better than just doing solo episodes, because then it would be really hard to drive traffic. But what's the biggest advice for someone? Just get started, dude. Like just like start sucking. That's all I got to say.
Exactly.
What are you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be bad at first, so stop trying to make your first episode perfect and just like put something out there, because before you put anything out there, nobody's going to be able to find you. And the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be. So like just start putting out content, get some reps under your belt, keep growing, and you're just going to get better over time. Yeah.
And I would say too, really, really try to figure out who it's for. Who your audience, like who you're trying to speak to. Like don't try to speak to everyone. It's one of the big mistakes. Like someone where I was working with recently, he's like, I want to talk to all business owners. I'm like, no, you don't. They're all way different. So try to really figure out who you're trying to speak to. We gotta, what is back end?
One more thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, a good technique that a mentor of mine told me, as far as like honing in on who you're actually talking to, is go 3 layers deep. Okay, so instead of just saying business owners, say business owners who are single moms who want to have more time with their kids. Like that could be your target audience, or your target audience could be, 24 to 34-year-old guys who are not satisfied with their 9-to-5 job. Like find like 3 layers deep is a really good place to go, because if you only go 2 layers deep, you're not going to really resonate with people. But if you can go 3 layers deep and really understand that person, where they're coming from, that can be a really good way to sort of have people feel like you're really speaking their language, that you really understand where they're coming from.
Gotcha. So guys, if you're still here, we still got 7 viewers. Give me hashtag live. If you're on the replay, give me hashtag replays. The more likes and comments we get, the better this post does. If you have any questions for Andrew before we wrap up in the next little bit here, drop them below. But dude, that's crazy. 3 layers deep. Like I use that but I never called it that for content calendars too. So we usually have the macro, like what is the core thing you're trying to like the core message you want people to get from listening to your show. And then we go deeper, like what are the 6 main topics? And then in each topic, what are the 6 micro topics? And then you create like, I call it silos, and you have tons of content. So you can use that for content too, not just your niche.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's like, we call it Cosmo, macro, micro. Rachel Peterson taught us that. So hashtag live, let's go. Michelle, dude, I have to ask you, just so people can get, because I know there's probably some people struggling here. What was your biggest struggle when you got started with podcasting, and like, how did you get over it?
My biggest struggle was really not knowing what I was going to say, because my first 4 episodes that I recorded in the radio studio, I literally typed out the entire thing, every single word. Like this was like each of them was like a 20-page long Word document. I kid you not. Like I still have them on my computer, and I'm like, oh my God, why did I ever do that? Like I would spend 2 hours. Yeah, no, straight up. Like I spent 2 hours in a coffee shop, like writing this whole thing out. It'd be like 30 pages long. And then I would just sit down in the studio and just read it and be like, today we are going to be talking about, and I was like, I listened back to it. I'm like, oh my God, that's so bad. Like, I can't believe anybody actually listened to that. And like, that was the biggest thing for me. It's just like realizing that I didn't have to know exactly what I was going to say at every single point, and that I could just riff a little bit, and that I could just like bring somebody else on the show and go back and forth with them for a while. And that I could just like have a topic that I knew about, that I wanted to talk about, and just sort of like go off of that. So yeah, the biggest thing for me was just like not being confident in myself and my ability to sort of like speak on something without having like a full script written.
Yeah. Especially with interviews, like I only use bullet points and questions, or doing solo episodes as like backup. I try to try to stay in the conversation and go deeper. So yeah, man. So there is no more questions popping in here. So we're gonna wrap up here soon. If you guys got value from Andrew, or Apple, sorry, I'm calling you Andrew now. Give me a hashtag Apple below, hashtag Apple. Give me some Apple emojis. How about that?
Yeah, they drop some Apple emojis.
You're gonna have to dig for that emoji. I don't think anyone uses that. Is there an Apple emoji?
There's 2 actually. There's a red one and a green one. I use them all the time.
Okay, give me a red and a green, guys. Red and green Apple emoji. But yeah, man. So is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up? I have a few last questions, but.
Not really. It's really just about taking action and just like figuring out what you want to do and just like committing to it. Like go all in on something. And a big thing for me was like I was trying to do too many things at once. But if you can really just hone in on like 1 or 2 things that you really want to do well, that's the best way that you're going to get stuff done. And yeah, really just find your 1 to 2 big priorities and then just start working towards them. Like just start taking action. It's not going to be perfect, but just getting those reps under your belt and really just going for it now, it's really going to pay off in the long term.
Cool, man. We got some Apple emojis here. That kind of reminds me of that Microsoft game. You remember with the worm, and you had to eat the apples? And they get too big? Oh man, that was the best game. So I like to ask people like, what has been, or I mean, I guess you use this in your interviews too, and I use that. I use it at the end of my interview, not in the beginning. Like, who was like the biggest mentor in your life? Who kind of taught you like everything you know? So.
Oh, that's really tricky because there's 2. Okay, there's 2. The first one is my mom.
Past. You can do past. And right now. You can just do both, like past and right now. But I guess mom is past.
Yeah. So, well, mom is still pretty current because she's a small business owner herself. She's been running her own business for about 10 years now. And she's a public speaker. So I've been taking a lot of wisdom from her lately as I expand my public speaking and speak at more conferences and really just like get myself out there more. So that's been a really, really valuable resource as far as like speaking goes. But then as far as online business goes, a really big mentor of mine has been Ryan Scribner. He's a YouTube creator. He's got about maybe like 400,000 subscribers right now. And he's been huge to me because we first connected a while ago. I offered to work for him for free, and I was basically just managing his Instagram account for free and creating content for him and whatnot. And that sort of grew from there. And he saw that I knew what I was doing and that I could provide value to him. And then he took me on, and he's put me on so many times. He's made so many valuable connections for me. And this dude is always like, I can't stress enough how valuable and how just like impactful he's been on me and my ability to grow my online business. So I would highly recommend, if you guys are interested in entrepreneurship at all, check out Ryan Scribner. He's a G. He really knows what he's talking about, and he's doing some really cool stuff.
Cool, man. Yeah, I see he has tons of videos with Dan Locke recently. That's pretty dope.
Yeah, he just did a collaboration with him.
Okay, dude. So for people who are still here and they want to follow you, they like you, I'm sure the best place is Instagram. Anywhere else?
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't gotten sick of me in the last 30 minutes and you want to actually hear more of my voice, the best place to go to find me is probably Instagram, and that's going to be at Apple Crider Official, and Crider is spelled cider with an R, so that's Apple CRIDER Official. That's the best place to follow up with me. I post in my stories multiple times a day, just like random stuff behind the scenes. And yeah, if you want to keep up with what I'm doing. Otherwise, my podcast, it's called Young Smart Money. Find it on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And yeah, that's all I got.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you being on here, man. Once again, drop some Apple emojis if you got some value, and then we'll sign off here, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out.
It's been a pleasure.